All right, and joining us in Studio B this morning to talk about that and many more topics, Bakersfield Police Chief Greg Terry. Good morning, and thanks for coming in.
I bet. Good morning.
All right, let's start with that shooting outside Foods Co. A tragic situation and a reminder that you were telling me of people that there are different ways to get involved.
There really is. I mean, we know that people care very deeply about what happens in their community and particularly in their neighborhood. And as we've all witnessed, unfortunately, these kinds of events where people come in and do a beer run or do a variety of kinds of thefts, depending on the type of store. And there is something innate, I think, in most of us that want to get involved, want to intervene, and want to stop that. And so I certainly understand that. But things can escalate so quickly and end in tragic circumstances such as we saw here. And so I want people to engage. I want people to intervene, but I want you to do that by calling 911. Using your cell phone, get as good a description as you can of everything that is going on. Be that effective eyewitness, because that is the most effective way, consistently, and the safest way for the community to intervene.
Now, you mentioned the frustration within the community. There's also, I think, there has to have been a frustration within the department several years ago when it had this idea that police just weren't doing anything when it came to crimes that were under $1,000 or whatnot. Can you speak to that and where we are now compared to that?
Well, I can speak to the sentiment, certainly, that we all felt like there was a sense of lawlessness, that the rules just didn't matter, and people were going in and taking huge amounts of theft, huge amounts of loss, because the dollar amount was significantly higher. The law has changed now and reduced that threshold down to the $400 so that it is a felony above that. And so that has changed the dynamics a little bit. We've also changed internally. We have an entire detective unit that's dedicated to retail theft and has been focusing on that for the last several years. But I certainly understand the community's frustration. And the reality is businesses are suffering as a result of it. Businesses that there's not large margins in their profit and the ability to keep their doors open and all of those kinds of things. And so we're impacted by consumers as well. But one of our other concerns is just how much this has devastated some of our businesses.
Talking about New Year's Eve and the latest DUI numbers that are coming out, they're still being looked at. But the one thing that stood out that you were just telling me is that there were no fatalities this year.
Yeah, thankfully we didn't have any fatal accidents during the holiday season over that period of weeks. And I think our most recent one was in November. And that's good. Obviously, we want them to never occur. I think overall, as we're starting to look at year-end numbers, we're probably going to end up with about the same number of fatal accidents as a whole in the city as we did in 2024, and that's about 44 or 45. And so far too many. I mean, those are members of our community that are lost, but thankfully, in the holiday season, we didn't have any local fatal accidents.
There was one law group that came out. We did a story about giving out vouchers for free Lyft and free Uber. All of this stuff helped to make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no reason to drive under the influence of alcohol or drugs. There are far too many options, and so we're grateful when we have partners in the community that are willing to step up and provide even an easier alternative for people to make that choice, because I do think people are trying to manage their alcohol level, and it's not about that. It's about, if you've consumed alcohol, do not drive.
You had mentioned that as well, and talking about the DUI, and the DMV actually puts that little notification bracket, the graph, in their thing, talking about height, weight, and how many drinks. You think that should be just
well, I think that leads people to engage in the conversation of, okay, I'm about a this, I'm about a 0.0, I'm about a 0.0, whatever, and I think it leads down that road versus the message being, if you've consumed alcohol or used drugs, do not drive. That's not being responsible, and that was the tagline for a long time, was be responsible. And while it's true, it is unacceptable and unnecessary for anybody to consume alcohol or drugs and drive.
Talking about staff numbers and whatnot, the BPOA coming out and saying that the numbers have been falling and reducing as far as the department goes and whatnot. What are you hearing out there? You just had an academy graduating class not that long ago. And where are the numbers right now?
Yeah, so we're seeing about the same numbers of attrition as we do year over year. That's about 30 or so that leave the department or separate, and for a variety of different reasons. We're continuing to see those numbers. We're getting into the budget seasons, and this budget is a little bit different than it has been in the previous years. we are talking about reductions. And we are looking very closely about how can we realign the budget. It's not just in the police department, it's really citywide that we've been given direction from the manager's office to take a close look and see how we can align services to continue to deliver services, but there is going to be reductions in the budget this year. And so we're beginning to look very closely at that. So obviously wanting to make sure that we maintain the capacity for our emergency responses, that we can continue our crime reduction, crime prevention programs, and also continue to engage in the community so that we can build that trust and relationships. Those are really our three priorities that we're focusing on the budget. And so there will be reductions in the police department's budget this next year, probably through attrition or through vacancies. I don't anticipate any layoffs or anything like that, but we are taking a very close look. Because the city manager has talked about this, the costs are outpacing the revenue. That's the reality. In our own lives, we see that, and certainly it's happening with the city as well. And so we're going to be taking a close look to see how we can better align and still maintain these core services while at the same time reducing costs.
Last time that you came on, you came on the morning after the monitor reports. The latest report had come out. It had mentioned different things, that numbers that had gone up or whatnot. But one that stood out that we were asking about was the 18, I believe, officers that resulted in 20% or a high number of the total number of arrests. Can you break it down a little bit more on what you found out of that?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about, and there's a lot of information and a lot of numbers in that report. And the reality is we couldn't replicate some of their numbers and their outcomes and things that they reported. In looking at our own data, we did find, and do find because we regularly monitor it, that there are clusters of officers that have higher percentages of complaints. And when you begin looking at that, it's almost always related to the type of assignment, the nature of the work, that they're in proximity to more community members in very emotional and difficult circumstances. And very often, there's large numbers of officers at those kinds of events. And community complaints, when they come out of that, can identify or create clusters of that. We do not have clusters of rogue officers that are out roaming it. We take this very seriously in looking at how we're performing and how we're delivering service, and that's what we found specifically with regard to some of the clustering. Again, we couldn't replicate their numbers. Some of their numbers were inflated. We're all pulling from the same data, and so I can't speak to exactly how they arrived at some of those things, but that's what we found with regard to the clusters that they reported or indicated that there was some.
I just recently sat down with Sergeant Travis Harless, who's now part of the Violent Criminal Apprehension Team. When 3 years ago he was part of the takedown crew at the station. Says it hasn't seen any in 3 years, but thinks they're coming back. Would a group like that be impacted by budget cutbacks and whatnot?
No, like I said, we're still working to maintain all of these core priorities, and they are certainly part of that. But there's going to be reductions potentially across the department in different ways. Again, we're going to try to absorb that through vacancies that already exist. But the street takeovers is a very dangerous thing, and we did have a rash of them for a few years here in the community, and they were very effective in trying to develop a response to that. I hope they don't come back, but if they do, we're ready.
Very good. BPD Chief Greg Terry joining us in Studio B this morning. Thank you for your insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.